Hi guys, back again. I just thought I'd share a few thoughts with you, and a few more of my ramblings perhaps. In the last vid, I talked about passive resistance and passive demonstration. I'm kind of seeing that kind of thing as like a last line of resort, because I have real hope, I guess, in people's ability to move themselves forward. I guess, you know, people out there that watched me last couple of vids start to get an idea that, you know, I believe in a passive way forward. I believe that people's actualising tendency to improve their situation, etc., is going to be supportive to that. And I think we can change it from within. I think we can change our system in this country, at least, from within. We have a vote. We sadly use it very little. You know, average elections in this country, while about 40% of people actually turning up to vote, that means there's nearly 60% or even 50% out there that might be engageable, etc. You know, that aren't already tied and affiliated to the main parties. I guess my idea for the future would be a government without parties, a government that works on a more consensus-based approach. I think having dominating parties where everybody's got to toe the party line and not express their own ideas, etc., is counterproductive. I think the 4-year term is counterproductive. It swings one way then the other, you know, allowing for continual upheaval and change as opposed to a good long-term plan. You know, enable us to plan further ahead, more efficiently and even-handedly. If you didn't have the party allegiance, if you didn't have the second jobs, massive expenses and privileges that go with becoming an MP, perhaps we get less people trying to line their pockets and fill their boots, and perhaps more people actually there doing the job because they really want to push things forward for the country as a whole, the people of this country. You know, it should be a respectable position, it should be a position for people that have got a fair degree of personal integrity. You know, some of the statistics I've seen show that people trust MPs less than they do double glazing salesmen. You know, and no disrespect to double glazing salesmen, absolutely. But it's a pretty sad indictment that we let these people run our country if we don't trust them. So I guess what I would see would be a massive shake-up in the whole system, and that would be the aim. I don't see a revolution, because that's just the absolute worst case scenario, isn't it? You know, that's bloodshed and violence, and, you know, I think it's possible to do it without. Can you imagine, you know, if all up and down the country suddenly people stood for election overnight? What would they make of that? It's come from nowhere, nobody knows nothing about it. What would the media do with it? So I guess there's never been, such a good time as now, in the UK in particular, and perhaps worldwide in some senses, to think about doing something new. Confidence in political systems of democracy are at an all-time low. You know, and we just need to remember that we have a vote, and if we use it, we think out of the box and use the system, then actually we could make a massive change. You know, I believe that it's possible to change the system from within. Once we're in, we can implement the changes that need to be made to actually bring this country from becoming oppressive and, you know, led and controlled, back to being a little bit freer and a little bit, you know, more like we would like to be. Let's have our individual freedoms back. Let's look at the way we interact with the rest of the world around us. You know, I think our troops need to be disengaged from foreign wars that have absolutely no legitimacy. Our boys are dying, you know, and I salute absolutely their strength, courage and bravery, etc. You know, but I think they deserve better than an endless, hopeless war that just feeds the pockets of the sort of like military-industrial complex. Corporations are making billions around the world on these guys' lives, and also on the lives of the nearly million plus casualties, civilian casualties in these war zones. I mean, can we imagine for 1 minute what it would be like if that was going on in our country? How would we react? Where would we be? Would we be in the streets throwing stones at the soldiers? The question has to be asked. Again, I must fully state that I support our soldiers. I think they do a fantastic job with crap equipment, on poor pay, and poor rations, too short a turnaround times. I think they really are doing wonders, but I honestly believe that they're being totally misused, and that's the point I'm making here, I guess. So, just a few ideas again from me. I would say no second jobs for MPs. They should have a basic civil service wage once elected. Perhaps work out some sort of suspension rule for jobs, or however we could see that working forward. We need ideas on this stuff. Second homes and expensive. Interesting question, guys? Close to probably many people's hearts out there. I would say build a dorm. Plenty of empty buildings in London. Let's have an MP's dormitory. We can have them all in one place. We can increase security so they'll feel extra safe, and also it'll save us an absolute fortune from the buggers ripping us off. But I guess that's short term. I'm thinking we need to make a stand. We need to move forward. A way to move forward, I believe, is to initially, in the short term, have a political lobby, have a political party, move it forward, start the ball rolling, state out an agenda, try for election, and crack the system from inside. To do it, we need a good majority, or a big chunk of the vote, because every other party will round us, including the BNP. That's the thing. People are voting for the BNP. Can you imagine the BNP in charge of this country with the recent legislations we have on terrorism, etc.? Recent anti-terrorism legislation. It's a scary thought. Imagine what could be done with those new funky laws in the wrong hands. That to me is quite scary when it comes to freedom of speech and, ability to express oneself. That could be denied completely, potentially, by the wrong kind of government. So I think it's an opportunity for us to have a go. Here's some of my ideas. Let's start the debate. I look forward to your comments. Take care, look after yourselves. Speak to you soon. Bye now.